I don't even know what to say about it. But before we get to Mr. Byrd, I always like to say a little something. Let me say this. Please like this video and share it right now so that we can reach so many more people. Because if everybody reaches one, then we've reached a lot more than we would have. These conversations are intriguing, they are in depth, they are provoking, thought provoking, heart provoking, and I've got so much feedback lately about just to keep going. And that's why I do. That's why we keep going. And we have so many people that want to speak about racism in dance and not just tell the horror stories, but also solutions. We want to come up with solutions about this thing. We don't want to just sit in a place of woe is me and this is still happening. We want to be in a place of solutions and what can we do about it? How do we change mindsets? How do we change hearts? How do we change or how do we change atmospheres and how do we change schools and companies and, so that they reflect the community? So that is the goal of Dance Conversations right now. I don't know what the future holds, but right now we're talking about racism and dance, discussions about racism and dance, and how we can address the issue. So last week I told you we had Donald Byrd on. Here he is. I'm so excited to have him. I told him before we got on, we have a little history because he choreographed and created the Harlem Nutcracker. And my students up in New Jersey, if anybody's watching, this is the man who created the Harlem Nutcracker, and they were ecstatic about being a part of it. My studio students were a part of it, and they were ecstatic about it. Many of them have gone on to be professional dancers, and I know that part of that was being a part of the Harlem Nutcracker. So I thank him personally. I want to thank him online right now for that body of work because it was absolutely influential in many of my students' lives as well. So, Mr. Byrd,
Yes.
please tell us about yourself, how you got started, where you are. Just lead us off.
Okay. I was thinking about when you asked me, when you were telling me about the format, like where would I start? And so maybe I'll just start at the beginning. How many of you are in Southern places too, right?
Yes, Jessica and I.
I grew up in Florida during the Jim Crow era.
Mhm.
And I think that's an important part of knowing uh, who, uh, uh, knowing who I am and why I do what I do now. I don't think I would have said that 10 years ago, but now I know that's true. That's why I'm kind of invested the way I am in the current moment and by doing the work that I do. So I grew up in a place called basically in Clearwater, Florida, which is a town that's on the west coast of Florida, and it was on the Gulf of Mexico, and it was really a remarkable experience. And I'm going to, and I think this is what I'm about to say is something that a lot of Black people have started to kind of have similar kind of views. So I went to segregated schools, and that was in the Black community there, and that was actually the best thing that could have happened to me.
Wow.
And it had to do with how teachers and the community was invested in the education of the kids. So I had Black teachers. They wanted me to succeed. They did everything that they could do to ensure that I succeeded at whatever it was that I was doing, and especially in terms of my education. And so, and that's a plus. And so then when I left there and I went to uh, two Northeastern elite colleges and universities. And by the time I got there, I think because of my experiences in Clearwater in the nature of the support that I got there, I think it helped me to survive in those environments. And I do say it as like, uh, I mean survive, because in some ways, being in those environments they were an assault on my blackness, whether it was kind of explicit, or it was, it was overt or covert, it was still there. And so in some ways, the trauma from being in those environments actually helped, kind of contribute a lot to uh, my difficulties and challenges in life, but also to my successes, because by being able to transcend them, it kind of made me better as a person, and also it made me better as an artist. One of the things that's happened, I think, uh, I'll go back a little bit to the autobiography part. The biography part is that when I first went to New York, I was a scholarship student at the Ailey School. So that was my first, and Ailey was also my first. The experience of the Ailey Company was my first. Uh, I think the beginning of a kind of reconciliation that I had with my blackness in the history of slavery. So for example, there were a lot of things, and I know there are probably a lot of Black people in my generation who felt that somehow that we were to blame for our being enslaved, and not like a kind of conscious kind of thing, but back there. So anything that had to do with slavery, I didn't want to know about, like the Negro spirituals, even though I thought they were beautiful. I like, don't be singing that around me, and stuff like, that's kind of the attitude that I kind of had. And so when I saw the Ailey Company for the first time in 1970, I think it was, and they did Revolution, that my mind just completely flipped.
Wow.
I kind of understood something that I never understood before. And one of them is that Black people uh, in America, in the Americas actually, had a really remarkable for turning what I call, excuse my French for saying this, turning shit into gold.
Yes.
Like the horrors of slavery, we made beauty out of a lot of it. Like those Negro spirituals were, it's beauty that was crafted from hardship. And I think we've done that. That is part of who we are as a people.
Yeah.
And so I think even another example would be in the the kind of the rise of hip hop. Hip hop came out of a lot of despair that was in urban communities, Black communities, and people turned that into something that was really positive. They turned it into song, they turned it into dance, they turned it into fashion, they turned it into a point of view, a perspective, a way of viewing the world. And that is one of the things that's really remarkable about Black people. Recently I've been saying, I love Black people. I love our inventiveness, our creativity,
Yes.
how smart we are. I love all those things. So I was at the Ailey School, and so that was the beginning of a process of kind of starting of evaluating. I think not consciously at first, but evaluating and understanding my Blackness outside of the Jim Crow South. And without a lot of baggage that went along with that, because I saw people, not in New York and at the Ailey School in general, they were just a different kind of Black people than what I had known and grown up with.
Yes.
And so that was really remarkable. They were artists. They were, they were people were they were professors. They were smart people. They were opinionated people. They were eccentric people. And the whole full range of human expression I experienced during that time, and started to look at myself not just as kind of in a limited kind of way, but really broadly in a really big way, that the universe was really big and that I could operate and did. It was possible for me to operate inside this large place instead of a kind of narrow little system that way. I think I danced with many people in New York. I did a lot of freelancing. I danced briefly. I danced with Gus Solomons Jr. I don't know if you know him. He was one of 4 Black dancers that ever danced for Merce Cunningham. And so I danced in his company. I danced with Carol Armitage, who had also been a dancer in the Merce Cunningham company. I danced briefly with Twyla Tharp. Uh, um, I Yeah, I mean, I did a lot of dancing around. I started choreographing while I was with Gus, and he was named the dean of the dance school at California Institute of Arts. And so I went there with him, and while I was there, I started choreographing and I was bitten by the choreographic bug. And many of the things that in my life that I was interested in, choreography seemed to be able to encompass those things. And I started my first dance company in 1978 in Los Angeles. And it actually lasted until 2002. We had our last performance in Santa Fe, New Mexico. So when the Harlem Nutcracker, for example, was part of Donald Byrd Group, which is the name of that first company.
Yes.
In 2002, I took a job here in Seattle at Spectrum Dance Theater, where I'm the artistic director. And then there's another kind of growth that started since I've been here. And I have always been interested in making work that that basically was about that was social commentary. But I would do it periodically before. But since I've been here in Seattle, especially the last 5 or so years, it has been the primary focus of my work. And people started calling me around the early 2000s, even maybe a little bit earlier, that I was a kind of artist activist.
Yes.
And so an activist artist, and that was true. But I think it was true, and I did it. But I don't think I was all in.
Okay.
I did it because I wanted to do it and I was interested in it, but I would get distracted by other things around dance making, like sometimes just want to make abstract dance, gonna be real pretty, you know, like that. And so now I don't have those concerns. I'm really, excuse me, I'm convinced that the work that I'm doing now is really important, and it is a complete expression of who I am as an artist. And I can't imagine doing anything else. It's kind of opened up my way of thinking about what art is, uh, what choreography is, what dance is, what dance can be. It raises a lot of questions, I think, from other people about, is that dance? What is, all of those things. And it's good because I think that one of the things that I'd like to do is, I think by nature, I'm a provocateur. And so it provokes. Uh, a lot of times people say the work that I do makes them feel uncomfortable. And I think that's good. And I say that when you feel uncomfortable, when you're experiencing something, what you really are doing is that you are experiencing your aliveness. So you're alive in those moments. Sorry, I live right down the street from the fire station.
Okay.
So,
Me too.
so that's been my experience here with the fire station. Sometimes I want to be irritated by it, but I have to remind myself that they are doing something good.
That's true.
And so I can be irritated for 30 seconds and then get over it. So I think back to what I was saying, I, 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 the work that I'm doing right now and the way I'm thinking about it is absolutely fulfilling. And it's like I feel like I finally am doing what I was kind of headed towards all the time. I mean, I think that, the whole idea of being myself as a provocateur, I think that and how I mean it is that I think my work asks lots of questions. I ask lots of questions. And the point is not to irritate you per se, but or it's purposeful irritation. It's not just to kind of get under your skin, but it is about having you having the audience think about things differently than how they normally might think of things, or to look at it from another perspective, or to consider that there are other ways of looking at and thinking about something. Yes. So I think when I first moved to Seattle, I didn't like it very much. And I think I didn't like it very much because it wasn't New York, not because of anything that was here. Like can't compare New York to anything really.
Right.
And so, and so I would always say I didn't like Seattle very much to people, but you know, it was really, it was meant to be my being here, because I would not be doing what I'm doing now and how I'm doing it now if I had not moved here.
Right.
And so it has shaped uh, who I am, my thinking, and it shaped my art and my process for making art.
That's a lot. That's a whole lot. Let me take you back to a comment you made when you first started, that you were glad that you were in an all black, I'm paraphrasing you, school,
Yeah,
because it helped to, if I'm saying it right, it helped you to grow as a young man.
yeah.
Tell me,
But go ahead.
I was gonna say, tell me a little bit more, because my dad said the same thing.
Yeah,
He said that he felt, because there was segregated schools at the time, that the teachers took more interest in them. He actually said that when segregation or desegregation happened, that it was not profitable for Black people because we were now being left out. We weren't being taught. It wasn't a good move, even though it was a good move.
yeah. I think, I mean, I agree with him. Those are exactly my thoughts. I mean, we kind of lost everything with desegregation. You know, the Black community started to disintegrate because, in some ways, because Black people that could have, before we didn't have any choice but to be with each other.
Right.
So everything was in those Black communities. That's where the Black doctors were, the Black lawyers, all the Black businesses, the entrepreneurs were all there. And so the people benefited, the businesses and all aspects, the economic aspects of the community benefited from everybody those uh, utilizing those services and businesses. And so uh, and so then what happened was that with desegregation, all the Black people that had resources of any sort moved out. And I think they, I think they felt like they were supposed to.
Oh, yeah.
Not
Because of the desegregation.
because of it, like, well, now we can go live some blah blah blah, and I'm going to go live there. And so and so that's what people did. And so a lot of the financial resources that were in Black communities left. And the same thing happened with the kind of intellectual uh, 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 education resources that were in those communities left as well. So one of the things about the school that I went to, I could walk from where I lived to school.
Mm-hmm.
So I walked to school. The other thing that was that there was an incredible interest in the school by the community itself. The community loved the school that I went to. They just loved it. You know, the marching band, the football team, everything. Everything we did, there was like a lot of participation, not just from parents, but other people in the community as well. And so you felt like you were part of a community, and that you were nurtured and supported, and that your Blackness was, I mean, like they talk about this now in a lot of ways about Black spaces, that was truly a Black space. And so with desegregation, Black people didn't know what to do. They didn't know how to create Black spaces again. They tried, there were efforts, and in some parts of the country, it was a lot easier than others. Let's say like Atlanta, which has a kind of really broad, big Black community that historically it's been that way. There's been wealth, there's been Black wealth there, there's been Black intellect there, there's been all of these things. But in a lot of communities, they didn't have those, there wasn't that kind of richness. And so for me, and when I talk to friends of mine that went to white schools or predominantly white schools, they said for the most part, the white teachers ignored them, and that and if they were having trouble, there was nobody that seemed to be willing or able or wanting to help them. And so the thing about being in an all Black school, first of all, everybody knows who you are. It was kind of old school in terms of that if you did something, your parents were let go and they sided with the teacher.
That's right. I had old school parents. Yes, sir.
you were wrong, So it's one of the things it taught you, or it taught me, and I think it taught many people respect for teachers
Yeah.
and for any Black person that was in authority, that we used to have respect for them. And yeah,
I was just going to say that in that frame of mind, that mindset fed right into dance. My first experience with dancing in a school, reputable school, they ignored me completely. I don't know. What was your first experience with dancing? I'm sure you said it, but tell me
yeah.
again.
My first experience with dance was pretty positive. There was no dance at the high school that I went to. I mean, there was dance, but boys didn't do it. And so that,
You started late. You started later in life.
what?
You started dance later?
Yes, but I mean, I was interested in dance,
Okay.
but I didn't dance it. So there was like uh, there was a dance something, I know it, the Modern Dance Club or something like that was called, and it was one of the teachers was the head of it. I mean, she ran it, and she had gone to one of the historical Black colleges. What is it? It's in I can't remember which one it is.
Female
Anyway,
empowerment?
huh?
What, go ahead. It's okay.
What college it was. I don't remember what, but anyway, they had a dance club at the college, and so she brought what she did there, and so she taught the girls, and so uh, anyway, so I knew about dance, and so like I was saying, at our school, anytime there was something, everybody would show up. So when the dance club had their show, the whole school would show up for the dance show, and so it was like packed, and so my experience, and I started to make little dances. Like a friend of mine was in that club, and so I made a dance with her, uh, and uh, and and so I kind of dabbled around in it. But when I first started studying dance formally,
Mhm.
uh, I studied in I was going to Tufts in Massachusetts, and I started dance classes at the Cambridge School of Ballet, which was a small ballet school in Cambridge, Massachusetts. And they didn't, they go, come on in,
Wow.
And so my experiences, and I don't know, I mean, I know some of it has to do that this is kind of true often with dance, that boys
Yes.
have an easier time than the girls do.
Yes. I
And
had
then I
to
think
tell
also
you-
Black boys have an easier time than Black girls in
I had
these.
a teacher to tell me that girl dancers are a dime a dozen, and she'll throw in two for free.
Right.
So, but the guys, and I've said this before, and I had somebody to say no, but I believe that it is a little bit easier for the guys because they want you all. There's so many girls and
Yeah,
not enough guys.
that's right. And I think that's true. And I think also, I think when boys do it, you have a lot of stuff going against you to say inside of kind of a mindset about you shouldn't be doing it.
Right,
It's not a manly thing to
right,
do, and blah blah blah. And what are people going to think of me, and blah blah blah. So you have a kind of determination. I mean, it's not saying that the girls don't have determination, but it's just a
right.
different kind of determination. Uh, and so you deal with it differently. I think for me, my experiences were pretty good. Even though I started late, uh, I think my facility was good for the most part, I think. And I was smart. And so I obsessed really easily. So I would just obsess on things and figure it out until I could do it, And so I progressed pretty quickly. Uh, I think the biggest challenge I had was really in my head um, about dancing as a man, like what that was, and then also like when I told my family that I wanted to dance, and they go, "Why do you want to dance? You have a mind." And so,
Oh,
like this thing is that dancing is kind of mindless. You don't need to be a thinker to do it. I mean, that just shows that they didn't understand but they also agreed that I should do it. My grandmother said to me, if you think it's going to make you happy, then do it.
Wow.
And so I did do it, you know. And so I think my experiences generally were positive starting out. I don't feel like I ever, and maybe I just sought out places where I intuited that they would be accepting of me, or I didn't stay at a place if I felt that. I mean, I probably should say that too. That if I walked into a place and it did, I just didn't go back. I'm not going to put myself through this.
When did you run into your first or your a noticeable racism in the dance world? Even in the Black, yeah.
Noticeable. I think, I mean, I think there were always little aspects of it that were around that, mostly from white ballet teachers and the kind of comments that they would make about Black bodies.
Mm-hmm.
And so that were obvious. I mean, they were these big, broad generalizations. And so, and I still hear some of that today, like from students even, like not young students, but when they're a little bit older,
Mm-hmm.
you know, like college age people will say things, go like, well, who told you that? Where'd you get that from? Is what I say.
Mm-hmm.
But I think, I don't think I ever, I mean, other than those kind of small things that are not small things
Mm-hmm.
that I heard, it never felt like for me in my dance experiences. I mean, I don't know. I think maybe I just thought what went through my head is like, it was like, if I sensed that any of that was there, I'm going to say it like Sophia did in The Color Purple. I just got the hell up out of there.
That's right.
I was not going to hang around for that.
No time for that, right?
For that.
So
I mean,
you know what? I want to read this quote. It says, I felt that something about the civil rights movement didn't take, that people didn't get it, that if these kids were behaving that way, it was a clear indication that something didn't work. That was from 1992. You were commenting on the 1989 slaying of Yusef Hawkins, a 16-year-old African-American in Brooklyn, who was attacked by a crowd of 10 to 30 white youth, beaten and killed. Tell me what you were experiencing and thinking about that.
yeah, I had an interesting experience today. My agent said to me, "Oh, you're something I'd said, or he said, oh, you're definitely half a glass half full kind of person." And I think I had lived my life up until that point, until the death of Yusef Hawkins, thinking that the civil rights movement had changed people's lives, not just Black people, but white people. They had kind of awakened in a really positive way. And that, because I used to say when I was little that all these evil white people were going to die, and then a whole new generation of people would come up. And then the thing I forgot was that they were the children of those evil white people, you know. And so they were carrying a lot of that in, bringing it with them into the future. And so I was kind of naive about what I thought the accomplishments of the civil rights movement, what it had accomplished. It did accomplish a lot. But I think as we're seeing now with all of the shootings and other things, that it's not, should I wait for the siren to stop? Is it really loud?
There you go. You're good now.
Okay, so I was thinking that with all the shootings and stuff, that also is an indication of that the racism just went underground.
Right.
But it did. It went underground, and it was still there. And so, with that quote that you read, it just, I woke up. I've been walking around being really naive about all of this. That I have not been vigilant. I have not been about about this situation, about the racism, anti-Black racism in America. My mind has not been vigilant. I have not kept my eyes open. I have not, you know, I've just kind of been la-di-dying along and like everything's fine, you know, and partially because I was seeing everything through how my career as a choreographer and a dancer was progressing. And that was kind of going along like nicely. There were a lot of things that were obstacles to it. And some of those things now I know they were also racial, but for the most part, it was kind of, but I was in a oblivious mindset.
Mm.
You know, I was just like, I just wanted it to be another way. I had this dream from when I was a child that one day everything was going to be okay, that all the racial strife, the kind of the biases, racism, and all that stuff would disappear. You know, like children think like that. And I was still holding on to my childish way of thinking. And so when Yusuf Hawkins was murdered, it just woke me up. And I thought, I can't just sit back and do nothing. I need to start participating in some way that I can. Maybe, and so that's actually when I did the minstrel show.
Okay.
Response to that.
Tell us about that.
Huh?
Tell us about the minstrel show.
Okay, so the minstrel show was a piece I did that that used the 19th century blackface minstrel show as a way of looking at stereotyping and how that stereotyping has persisted from the whenever it was that minstrel shows began, I don't remember right now, up until they finally ended, but they didn't really end. There were remnants of the minstrel shows that kind of exist, and, you know, and we see it all around us. Yes. And, you know, so I used that as a way to kind of interrogate, by interrogating the 19th century minstrel shows and creating this contemporary version of it. It was a way for me to kind of to remind people how all of these stereotypes still persist today and how they still have an impact on us. And so one of the things that when we're working with the dancers, when we were in rehearsal, I mean, they were young. And so, I mean, they're in their 20s. And I mean, I was already 30 something then. I think, yeah, I was 30 something, maybe 40. And so my experiences were different than theirs. So I wasn't as sensitive to some of that stuff as they were, some of those images, some of those, you know, languages. And like me, they had been shielded in some ways by, you know, by wanting to forget the past. And one of the things that I'm about, I think, is that we cannot forget the past because it keeps showing up.
Showing up. We right back where we started. Right back
where we started. You know, it may have inched forward a little bit, but it's always, right now it feels like it's always at the beginning. And yes. So we have to be on a trajectory, I think, on a road, and I'd say we Black people need to be on a trajectory where this stuff has to end. Like
we see it right now. It's been how many months now since George Floyd was killed, and we're going back to the status quo, to the everyday life. We're not keeping that fire, except for now, the young man got killed in Wisconsin. So here it is again. Here we are looting and rioting again. But what's going to be 2 months down the line? We keep waiting for the next person to get killed, and you know, you've been so provocative, I love that word, in your choreography, which I think we as dancers have to embrace, that our language is dance and we have to use it in order to speak about what's going on in the community. It can't just be pity pat, cutie cutie, nutcracker, or whatever else we doing out here. That's I mean, it's the money makers, but how about we need to change mindsets, even with what we do as dancers.
Right. I think there's a place for, as you say, the pity pat. There's a place for that, and you know, because sometimes you want to bring, some People need joy, and sometimes they want us to just forget for a little bit, and that's fine. You
Yes.
know, I always think of it like the movie The Matrix, and there's a scene where the guy, he says, I know this isn't real, like this steak isn't real, but sometimes I just want a steak or I want a hamburger, whatever it was. But the point being that people will allow themselves to be lulled into complacency because they are exhausted
Right.
by reality, and that's true. That's what we saw. I think right after George Floyd was murdered, a lot of the demonstration and stuff, I felt exhausted by it all.
Yeah.
You know, I'm worn out. I'm worn out.
I didn't
But
want to turn the news on. I was just like, I'm tired.
yeah, but I think the thing that we have to do is figure out how to move through it. And
Right.
by the work that we do, the activist work, in whatever way that we participate in each individually, that has to be a way of refreshing us so that we are able to go forward. It can't just be, I'm just going to scream at you. And but it has, as you said, you're about solutions, and I think that's a kind of solution. That's the solution to your exhaustion, is to get focused on the work and how you're doing and what you want it to do. And so I love what you said about the dance is the language that we have. Other people have other languages that they use and tools that they use, but that's what we have. And so for me, that's why it's really important that what it does, like by using dance this way or engaging with dance this way, it expands the language of it,
Yes.
you
Yeah.
know. So, I mean, and I had somebody say to me, I mean, it's a very talented and uh, white man. He's a little bit older than I am, and his work, he goes, "Oh, I think your work is great, but the activism part of it and the message and all of that stuff. I make dances about, I grew up in this place, and and I run around in fields, and I said, and that's really great. That's really great. I'm glad you had that. But as a Black person, that's not the experience that I had.
Right.
So I need to make dances that reflect my experience, but also I need to make dances that address the issues and the challenges that face me as a Black person and the face Black community. I need to because that's important. That's part of my job, is being a productive member of society.
Yes. You know, Arthur Mitchell started the Dance Theater of Harlem in response to Martin Luther King being killed. I think that was part of his language, was like, you know what, this is the way I'm going to speak. No longer am I going to stand for my Black brothers and sisters not having a place or a role or being able to express themselves. We can be classically trained dancers just like we can be anything else. And we have to do the same thing. I mean, it's 2020, 50 years later, 52 years later, but we have to take our dance and express what is going on. And if it stimulates thought, if it provokes anger, if it encourages people to, I mean, if I had a dance created that was reflective of what's going on today, and somebody got up and walked out, I would think I made a good point, because it should be uncomfortable. The dances we make, because this is an uncomfortable time period. We are tired of this, because we've been doing it for a long time, not just in the world, but in the dance world as well. We've been experiencing racism. And that's why, I'm doing this Dance for Stations. I don't know, like I said, I don't know what it'll turn into, but right now it is about eradicating racism and through our language, through our medium, and that's why I respect what you do so well, so wonderfully, because you are using it to provoke, to make people uncomfortable, to express who you are authentically too, which I think is wonderful. We got a couple of questions. Let's see. Marie, I said your name right. Marie asked, how does the nation's discourse impact How does a nation's in discourse impact your creativity? That's one question.
Okay. Uh, I think it's because I'm mindful of it. You know, I'm mindful of what's going on right now in this country, and I feel like it, it it causes me to think about what do I need to do, and how can I do that using my creativity as a tool to do it. So what it it has an impact in terms of that it makes my creativity purposeful,
Mm.
you know. And so I mean, you know, it's like eating. You eat because I mean, you can eat just because you can eat,
Right.
but best when you eat when you're hungry.
Yes.
That's when it's most fulfilling and most satisfying. And so I feel like, you know, that how it impacts my the creativity, what happens is that it makes it um, purposeful. And so therefore it becomes, to be creative then becomes more fulfilling.
Yes. Yes. Um, Her next question is, how can we create a culture of activism and race privilege in collegiate dance programs?
I don't work in those programs, so I don't really know. Other than what I said earlier, I think before we started about praise dancing, I
Right.
think praise dancing is, you know, to me, I don't know if white people do praise dancing. I've
They
never,
do.
they do. Okay, good to know. But I think the way, uh, I think things that are uniquely Black or that have a particular Black, uh, uh, what's the word I'm looking for? A particularly Black, I want to say articulation, but that's not it. But a kind of focus of it is, or the essence of it is Black. I think that the more that can be in those environments, because generally in college environments, the dance thing you have ballet, it's kind of hierarchy. You
Mhm.
know, it's
Yeah.
ballet, modern, and then jazz, and then you have some tap, and you have a little bit of African,
Electives. Yeah.
a little bit of this, and a little bit of that. And I think the thing is that these things that are specific um, to the time uh, and to the peoples that make up the America need to be in those programs, need to exist in those programs. That, you know, and I know it's kind of like people are like, we need to decolonize dance. You know, what does that mean? What does that really mean? Yes, we do need to decolonize, but what does that mean, and how do you go about doing it? You know, and what aspect of decolonization are we talking about? I think that I mean, I'm going to teach a course. I believe I'm going to teach it. It's kind of on the table. A course about uh, I can't remember exactly what the title of the course is, but really it's about uh, making. It's about arts activism. About, you know, about how do you make work that addresses issues? How do you do it? Like everybody has like, I'm feeling this and I'm da da da, but how do you actually do it? What's the concrete way of doing it? So one of the things that you have to do is that it means that you have to investigate and you have to research. And so you have to open up your mind and your awareness of of, of the topic, the information that's out there, the perspectives and points of views. And so I think one of the things that it is about um, uh, uh, is kind of like that, that in dance programs in colleges is that it's about uh, shaking up the notion about what is dance. What is it? What is
Who
it?
is dance as well?
And who is dance?
Yeah.
Who is, I mean, what we do here in our school, which is uh, it's the school that's attached to Spectrum. We have a part of this called World Dance, and so they have to take. We provide classes for them to take uh, study dance forms that are outside of the European canon of dance studies, and because I think they need to understand that other ways of seeing things and doing things is just as valid as what we do.
Yes.
It's kind of like that old song, "White is right."
Right, 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 get back.
That's right.
Right is-
That's, that's not what we're That's not what we're gonna do.
I believe that a part of having a collegiate program is taking some of the focus, well, maybe not even taking the focus off of ballet and modern, but more specifically providing other avenues. Why can't there be a hip hop track? Why
Right.
can't there be an African track? And
Exactly.
not just teaching 5, 6, 7, 8, but teaching the history, the what and you have to be submerged into the culture. If you're taking an African class, why not be submerged into the culture so you can really feel what is happening? And it doesn't matter, what color you are.
Right.
We've been submerged in the European culture when we're in ballet. So why not be submerged in the hip hop culture if you're in a hip hop class or
Right.
on a hip hop trajectory? And I think that's part of the issue. We've made African and hip hop and tap, we've made those art forms electives. And so you can only get the 5, 6, 7, 8
Right.
as opposed to fully embracing, the come from with the hip hop culture. And then it diminishes the importance of the dance and the culture behind it,
That's right.
what it came out of.
Yeah.
So if we had college programs, and I've talked to other professors about it, that would actually be the ideal. The issue is that ballet and modern have been working all of this time. So why do we rock the boat? Why do we, make the
It's
change?
time to rock the boat. It's time. I mean, and I have to say, I kind of applaud what they are trying to do at USC with that program by putting that, in fact, hip hop and in particular is not an elective. You have to do it.
The USC in California?
USC California.
Yes.
You have to do it. It's part of the curriculum and not an elective. It's the core part of it. And I mean, they have their particular reasons for doing it, but I think the idea of it is that, I mean, in general, is that these non-European or inspired dance forms that come from the inspiration and the source of them are not ballet and contemporary dance or European forms, basically, that they need to be a part of that every kid in a dance program should be doing them.
Yes, I agree.
When I was at the Ellis School, I used to hate doing jazz.
Did you?
I used to hate doing jazz. I used to hate doing jazz. But it was interesting because I had studied a lot of jazz before then. And then suddenly I didn't want to do jazz because it was all about ballet and modern.
Uh-huh.
And I mean, and later I thought about that. Well, what was that all about? Really, about wanting to do it. And I think a part of it is like internalized racism,
Okay.
my coming to understand I didn't want to do it because it was associated with Black people, and I didn't want to do it. Is that and that what and so I think one of the journey that I have been on my life is reclaiming my Blackness, that aspects of it I abandoned along the way. And so, I have sadness about that, actually, that, because it was misguided, but it also is a result of the trauma
Right.
of racism, how it's impacted us. And the thing is that I can't do anything about that, but what I can do going forward is kind of be mindful. I'm kind of being mindful of it and constantly checking myself when what's happening is that my internalized racism is expressing itself.
Wow.
And
Yes.
being honest about when that is.
Yes. That's interesting because, you're not speaking so much of having encountered racism in the dance itself, but the of course the microaggressions that you did experience, but more so of the external racism, external out of dance that you encountered and brought that into the dance world with you.
Yeah.
Not that you were racist, but that you had this baggage of racism
Yeah.
from
And
the.
that's right. And I think how that, what that, one of the manifestations of that is self-hate. You
Mhm.
know, that's how it doesn't necessarily go out into the world to get other people. You know, what it is kind of like the enemy within.
Right.
That's the thing. And so the thing is like, it's kind of like knowing that you have a disease,
Yeah.
and then and you see manifestations of it in your body, and then the thing is, where is it located inside? And then you, that it's about stamping that out, about killing that.
Yeah,
And
that creates a lot of self-hate, low self-esteem when you are feeling those and when you
yeah,
experience those things.
and they are, it's not like low self-esteem in a kind of in a normal or typical psychological way. It's tied into racism.
Right.
It's in a little racism bag
Mhm.
that's in there, and it's kind of sending out little poisons and toxins out that way. And so that's the tumor, perhaps, you know, that how that's kind of operating. And so uh, I think, I, I mean, it's certainly, I mean, I think now, I mean, I've done a lot of work on myself. I mean, that's the advantage of living a while, is that you have the opportunity to do a lot of work on yourself.
Yes.
I've kind of, and so I've done a lot of work on myself, and I mean, I'm clearly not done, but I think part of it is being honest. And I think especially when sharing with other people, kind of like not, you know, it's kind of like why I'm not a big fan of Instagram, and because it's kind of like this curated thing, like this is how I want you to see me, and aren't I beautiful, or aren't I perfect, or this is my life wonderful, and blah blah blah. And the thing is, that's not really sharing.
Right.
That's not real sharing. Is that you let people see uh, the whole thing as much
Good,
as
the bad, and the ugly.
you know.
Let me ask another question. Let me see. Marie, what would be your strategy towards moving the needle in dance training? So she's coming from the place of racism in the dance
I
training.
think I kind of said, I mean, I think a little bit earlier, it's like these, that the curriculums have to change.
Right.
Yeah, the curriculums have to change. They need to include, they need to, that, I don't know how you do it, because I mean, like the thing is like, how do you decenter ballet and modern?
Right.
How do
Right.
you,
That's kind of what Eugene is asking. Is it more, it's more so in ballet, that ballet is being taught as the foundation of dance.
that's right.
How do we adjust that thinking? Maybe that's the colonizing thinking that we
Yeah.
possess.
I think, like, I mean, we had this conversation. I had a ballet teacher at that lovely school I went to. I mean, she was really nice, but she said one time, and she goes like, if you can do ballet, if you can master ballet, you can do any kind of dance. And that's, you know, and I think, and I thought at the time, I'm going, huh? You
Yeah.
know, like I didn't know what to say back, but I kind of listened to what she was saying, and you know, and I thought, well, maybe it's true. I don't know, but of course, that's not true. You master ballet, then what you can do is ballet. That's what
Ballet. That's right.
you can do. And
Yeah.
so I think part of it is a change in the curriculum, like thinking about what do you want the dancer to be? What do you, you know, I mean, if right now what we are seeing is that the choreographers are coming from many kinds of backgrounds and making different kinds of work. And so you want a dancer that could actually be able to enter into these new spaces.
Yes.
And so it can't be all one thing. It just can't. And I think especially when you have now, like you have so many. uh, ex- how do I want to say this? You have so many opinionated, I mean it in the best way, young Black people,
Mhm.
and you know what? They're not going to have it.
Nope.
They're just not going to have it. And the older we and people that are in positions of authority, and we need to listen to them and respond. I used to say, like, what can you tell me? You don't know anything yet, and blah, blah, blah. They're like that. But actually, they know what feels right. And something they know that this doesn't feel right to me. You know, there's something about this. That's, like I said, when I would walk into those environments where it was like racism was kind of, as a friend of mine says, where it was the room was full of terrorists. You know, then I knew to get out. And I think the same thing that with young people now. Uh, I mean, I think that's a conversation that to be had with dance educators, uh, with students about what do you think? I mean, I think departments can do it at individual schools, you know, like what do we need to do? Like given how the world is, how do we need to change how we do things? Because clearly the way we're doing it now is not, and what we're producing is not necessarily uh, a reflection of the world. I mean, it certainly is happening with I don't know if you know Teresa Howard and her whole Mount Ballet
Yes.
and the whole thing about this thing about blacks in ballet and kind of changing what that is. And I think if ballet allowed black people in, ballet would get better. It
Yes.
would just be less white. It would actually get better.
Yes. Because of what we bring to the table.
But because of what we bring to the table, you know, and they don't want what many of them don't want what we bring to the table.
Yeah. Yeah.
But you know, but we're going to bring it to the table anyway. And I think that it's the same thing with these dance programs in colleges and stuff, that we have to uh, start talking about the curriculum and invite everybody to the table to talk about it. I mean,
I,
I don't know what it looks like, to be
I
honest.
agree. I think that we do because they are living in this 2020 this age. And
Yeah,
we do have to talk with them about how they see the future. What do they see coming up? Because many of them, even though they're experiencing racism, I'm talking about African American sisters and brothers, they're experiencing racism. It's different than when we were coming up, and the whole atmosphere is actually different.
yeah,
So now, how do we address the 2020 everything in dance, racism, art, culture, because we want the culture to be represented as much, the African culture, the hip hop culture, the jazz culture. We want that to be expressed just as much as the ballet culture. And what's happening is all the funds are going to, well, it flip flops between ballet and modern. You know, sometimes some years modern gets all of the money, and some years ballet gets all of the money. But none of the money comes down to the companies that are, let's call us alternative companies, you know, where we are fusing ballet and African and jazz and modern and creating works that reflect the community like you're doing. So you are blessed to be where you are and being able to express yourself. But it's so many of us out here that would love to be able to do that, but it takes dollar bills, y'all.
it also takes. I think like my experience here. Uh, my first 5 years of Spectrum was, a friend of mine would say, was hellacious. It, you know, like working with the board, the whiteboard, and trying. They just didn't understand what I was trying to do or wanted to do, and so what I had to do was just fight, 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 fight. You know, fight and don't give up. And then sometimes the other thing I said, you have to outlive people, you know, as well. You know. And
Yeah.
so I think the how do it's not you, you know, one of the things that I read this thing once and I hadn't thought of it, but it wasn't so long ago. this notion that to do what we do takes courage. And I hadn't thought of it like that before, but it's true. It takes courage. It takes courage because you may be fighting a war that you may lose.
Right. True.
But you have the courage to go into battle anyway.
Yeah.
And you hope for the best. You just fight as hard as you can. And I think what you're talking about in terms of that, it is money, but it also is can't do it by yourself.
Right.
You have a group of people around you,
Yes.
with you, and you're doing it together.
Yes.
And I found that collaboration is everything now. I used to think, I had bought into this Western European or this European notion of that I did it myself. I'm a self-made, I'm a something, creative, blah, blah, blah. I didn't do it by myself. I did not. I absolutely did not.
You can't. It's impossible. Well, it's hard. How about that?
It's hard. I mean, and it's not just the people that I'm in the studio with. It's got the people in my high school, Pinellas High School in Clearwater, Florida. All of those people and what happened there actually is what drives a lot of what is the kind of support, emotional support perhaps that I have, that I need, that's determined who I am or contributed to who I am.
Yes.
And I mean, that period of time in some ways was probably the happiest time of my life. I mean, there's one other time that I think was pretty happy too. And that's when I lived on Venice Beach in California. That was pretty happy. But Clearwater was really, was perfect.
Okay.
It was perfect. And my friends that I grew up with, I learned a lot from them. I mean, I kind of learned that, one of the things about, I say it sounds so stupid, but this idea of like, like Black people are really smart, because these kids that I was in school with, I mean, they were many of them so smart, and many of them did really well, have had lives that have been really well, but the circumstances of life in America kind of really beat some of them down.
Yes.
So in some ways I feel like that it is important that I succeed at what I do for my friends from back then, because they all contributed to who I am, but they also had faith in me even back then, my friends did. And so.
And that means a lot to have support and
right.
to believe in you and what you can accomplish. Because those times that you don't believe that, they can be like, you can do it. You got it.
That's right.
You got this. We want to go back. There was a question that Eugene Lang had. He says he has an issue. I think this is why I have an issue with So You Think You Can Dance and all of these other programs. I've stopped watching them because I've only seen one African piece. How do you feel about those shows?
How do I feel about them? I don't really like them. I think they do something, you know what I mean? They do something. They put dance out there in front of people. They're kind of a good advocate for dance, but I think, especially for people who don't know very much about dance or know little about dance or not so experienced in their dance viewing, they're not made for people like us, unless our friends are on there, and then they are. But I don't think they're made for us. I mean, and they are kind of one-dimensional.
Yes.
In terms of how they think about it, and honestly, I think in some ways dance is an acquired taste. I mean, some people just don't have an affinity for it.
And that's okay.
Yeah.
Don't have an affinity for it. That's fine. I actually think that shows like So You Think You Can Dance present a false ideology, because I have people coming to me saying, well, I want to dance like that. Well, she start somewhere. She gotta take classes. She's not gonna be dancing like that at 2. or
Right.
even 5, you know, and I'm like, moving for tots. That's what she can do. She can't do so you think you can dance. And they spend hours a week rehearsing, and people, they don't show that part either.
Yeah.
That it takes hours and hours and hours for them to get the one or the 2 dances that they're doing that week. And as far as the racial disparity, well, yeah, I think, what was it? So not So You Think, the other one, they got their first Black professional this year or last year. So it permeates throughout. You
Yeah,
know,
it does. I
it
mean,
permeates.
I mean, what do they call it? Something bias.
Unconscious, implicit.
The implicit, yeah, implicit bias is that's the thing. I mean, the thing was talking about mindfulness, like
Mhm.
that's all that people just need to be mindful. I
Yeah.
don't believe people are like many, not many. I don't know because there's some hateful people out there, but I think perhaps many of the people that have implicit biases are not hateful. They're not mindful.
They're not mindful.
They're not mindful.
And they probably grew up in that atmosphere,
That's right.
because bias, racism is a learned thing. It's not anything that we come out of the womb. Oh, I'm racist, I don't like Black people. But it's something that they learned in their environment. So even if it's not a direct, okay, Black people can't dance ballet, you grow up thinking that because you don't see us in the ballet class,
That's
or
right.
you grow up saying, well, we're white people don't grow up and say, well, where the Black people at in the ballet class? The Black people grow up saying, where the Black people at in the ballet class? That's what I was like, am I the only one for real? So that fosters that whole bias. And then when someone Black does come, we have a different body shape sometimes, or we have a cultural background is different. Our hair is different. So now they have to deal with us coming into their environment, and they don't really know how to do that.
Right. I think, I mean, you might have something there. I think that it's not like they don't want us there. It's just they don't know what to do when we're there.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I mean, it may be they don't, but I think that's a lot of it because our presence makes them uncomfortable often.
Mhm.
And sometimes that uncomfortability, all of the noise that's in the background for them just comes to the surface. It's no longer in the background, and then they don't know what to do with that. And so, I mean, I think in some ways I would kind of be like the Dalai Lama, like we can have some compassion for them, that way.
Yeah.
But that still doesn't mean that it's okay.
Doesn't mean it's okay. And I want to say this. I'm thankful for all of the firsts. The first principal with this company, the first principal with that company, whatever. But when do we get past the first?
Yeah.
How long is it going to take us that it's going to be the first again? Because there's always a time period where it's been so much time since the first one, it's almost the first one again.
Yeah.
And we need to really get past that. I keep saying it, I'll keep saying it again. At the very least, if you are a company or a school in a community, your school and your company should reflect the community.
Community.
And the only way that's going to happen is if you make yourself available and to the community that you live in. Now, if you in an all-white community, but if you're not, many of them, I mean, what you gonna do? But you still can go seek out. I talked with a company director and I said, you just opening your doors is not going to get Black people here.
That's
because
right.
we've discovered something else that's making us money, that's getting us on television, that's filling the void that you have created. And we not interested in what you're doing because we don't see ourselves.
Yeah.
And because we don't see ourselves up on that stage, and I'm talking explicitly about classical ballet right now.
Yeah.
We don't see ourselves up on that stage. It's not an option for us.
Yeah.
That's how I wanted to start dancing, even though I loved it. I didn't see myself until I was 7 or 8 years old, 7 years old. And when I saw myself, finally, I was like, yes, I can dance now because look, she's dancing. So that means I can do it too.
Yeah.
That was back in the 70s. So we've got to make the dance available, and not just available, but there needs to be an embracing of the community that you are situated in. And I think that's one of the main things that's not happening.
Yeah.
Is because it's not affordable. Dance can be expensive. It can be elitist. It can be all of those things, racist. And how do we combat those things? Only by providing avenues that, and going to seek out people of color, Black and brown people of color. That's the only way it's going to happen.
You said something earlier that I was really interested. You said the first, and also we have to change the notion of the first and the only.
The first and the only.
The only. So where those things are not, they're irrelevant.
Then it becomes tokenism. It becomes that whole, we filled our quota.
Yeah.
We got the Black girl or the Black guy.
Right. It's like Broadway shows do that. They will never have more than 2 Black people in a musical. It's a Black girl and a Black boy. If they don't have it's always never more than 2.
Never more than 2. We had a company here that had a Black Clara. This was several years ago. I hadn't seen one since. So you're trying to tell me there's not another Black girl that could have danced that role in 10, 15 years?
Yeah.
Clara ain't but 10. So it could have been a couple since then at least. Even second cast. How about let's second cast it?
Yeah.
I don't know. What is the issue? Why is it that you see this character? And I say characters are colorless. Aren't characters colorless?
No.
They should be.
Yeah.
They can be.
They can be. I mean, they actually can be anything that you want them to be.
Exactly, because it's a character.
Right.
Well, tell me this. I'll ask this one last question. I don't think there are any more over here. One last question. What choreography have you done that you felt like it was the most provocative, and it was really truly a labor of love for you because it did express what you wanted to say?
Which choreography? I think there'd been the one that I did for Spectrum that I felt that way about recently, at any rate. My memory is short. Is Shot, which was the one about police shootings, and that was a remarkable experience because I felt like I really leaned into it in a way, and also I think I was inspired because I took the recording of Rakia Scott that she had recorded on her cell phone, the shooting of her husband, Keith Scott.
Oh, yes.
In Charlotte.
Mm-hmm.
And that was so, listening to her on that phone, but when she was talking to the police, when she was trying to talk to Kim, and and after they shot him, the way she sounded. And one of the things that it did, it reminded me that all of these people, and I think, that have been murdered have families. They're not a thug. They are not there's somebody's son, somebody's daughter, somebody's mother or father, and that somebody's going to miss them. Somebody's going to miss them.
Yes.
And kind of, for them to be treated that way is really horrible. And so thinking about working on that piece, I thought a lot about all the people that have been shot. And it's one of the things that Michael Brown's mother said, they left his body out there in the street for hours. Mm-hmm. And his mother, that just destroyed her.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Not even covered up.
Not even covered.
And so that piece was really kind of operated for me on a lot of levels. I think it operated on the level of protest. It also operated on the level of kind of spirituality, on a spiritual level. I felt really connected, and I felt like it was, again, it was perfect, purposeful, and I was moved by it and how the dancers in their performance, in the creation of it, the way the dancers, like they each have these long solos that they say is a representation, of that, which is a kind of memorial to each one of the people that we knew at the time that have been shot, which they recite and then they dance the solos.
Right.
And to me, it was that was a really powerful experience for me.
Wow. You're in Seattle, Washington, and we're in Columbia, South Carolina, or all over. We're looking. How can we see Spectrum? Is there anything on YouTube, or you guys got something coming up?
Yeah, there is something. Shot is actually online. If you go to, I mean, our website is being refurbished and stuff now, but next week it should be up fine, and you can watch it that way. There are other videos that are there as well. I mean, they'll take you to a YouTube channel, but you can access them through our website, and which is spectrumdance.org. And I mean, it's kind of hard to know when we're going to be. We're starting our season, and our season, at least half of our season this year will be virtual.
Okay.
And so, I mean, I can send you our press release about our season announcement.
Great.
But also, if people just keep checking back on our website about the season, then they'll be able to access the programming that we're doing.
Very good. I'm excited. Do you have something new in the works you want to give us a little hint about?
Well, yeah, I start out, the season begins with a piece called, a new work. It's called 14 Solos. Okay. And it's a solo for each one of the dancers in the company. And it is about the results of being isolated and quarantined during this time that we're living in now. And so it's these 14 people isolated.
Nice.
So I'm excited about it, about how it's going to work out. I mean, it's being created for the camera, so it's not a documentation of what would be a live performance. It is a specially created camera dance.
Okay. All right. We're going to look forward to seeing that. No more questions. And look, I don't want to hold you any longer. I want to personally thank you tremendously for coming on. Such words of wisdom. You said quite a few things. I was trying to listen and jot down at the same time. It was hard though. I just decided to listen. But I'm sure that we have gathered a lot of information from you tonight and that we will take with us. And I appreciate that you continue to provoke us and inspire us. So please continue to do that through our language, our dance language, because that's what we have, right? We have this language that we have to convey to people. I want to thank everybody who is watching. I see you, Cheryl. I see you, Jean, Yolanda. I'm calling out Jermaine, Kenny, Marie, D. Terrell, Carolyn. Thank you guys for watching, and everybody else who is watching as well. I appreciate you all tuning in and sharing. And one more question. Jessica says, how can we take this class that you were talking about creating at Spectrum?
Well, I'm teaching the class actually at Cornish College.
Okay.
So
you're already teaching?
No. It will start I think it will start when their semester starts. I don't know what those dates are yet.
Virtual? Will it be virtual?
It's going to be virtual.
Okay. All right. Very good. Thank you so much. I appreciate you. You have a great night. If you are watching, I appreciate you watching. Tune in next week. We have, I believe we are dealing with dance studio owners, and how they have experienced and racism and what they've done or what they are doing differently in their dance studios and how that is affecting their dance students.
Mm.
Yeah, right. Right. So tune in next Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 7 p.m. Central Standard Time, and 5 p.m. Pacific Time so that we can continue this dance conversation with Gail, discussions about racism in dance. Thank you so much. Thank you again, Mr. Byrd. I really, truly appreciate you.
My pleasure. Thank you.
I was honored to have you on. And I will see you guys, Dance Sensation Nation. See you next week. Share and like. We are gonna. Thank you so much, Mr. Byrd. I appreciate you.